The abandoned cruise ship loomed in the moonlight, its once luxurious exterior now faded and grim. Inside, the ship's grandeur was lost to silence and decay. Marcus Cole, the lone security guard assigned to oversee its nightly security, patrolled the labyrinthine corridors, his flashlight cutting through the shadows. It was Marcus's first night on this eerie assignment, and the ship's emptiness weighed heavily on him. Every creak and groan of the vessel seemed amplified in the stillness, feeding a growing sense of unease. As he made his way towards the lower decks, the ship's alarm system emitted an intermittent, unsettling beep. It was irregular and out of sync with the ship's typical routines. Marcus checked the control panel, but everything seemed normal, and the alarms ceased as abruptly as they had started. Continuing his patrol, Marcus noticed a narrow passage partially hidden behind a stack of dusty crates. Intrigued, he pushed aside the crates and discovered an old, rusted door barely visible in the dim light. With a mixture of apprehension and curiosity, he managed to pry open the door. The room beyond was small and cloaked in darkness. Marcus's flashlight revealed outdated electronic equipment, old, weathered furniture, and a large wooden desk covered in grime. As he approached the desk, he noticed a set of old tapes and a dusty reel-to-reel recorder. Marcus hesitated, then, driven by a mix of curiosity and duty, he decided to listen to the tapes. He dusted off the recorder and threaded one of the tapes into the machine. The hiss of static filled the room, followed by a distorted, eerie voice. "Not safe. The voices are getting louder. They're here, watching us. Don't let them find you. They know we're hiding." The recording cut off abruptly, leaving an unsettling silence. Marcus's skin crawled. He picked up another tape and played it. This one was more disturbing. "Escaped. The captain's orders were clear. They're coming for us, but we can't leave. The ship is our tomb. Beware the shadows, for they know." Marcus's heart pounded as he sifted through the remaining tapes. Each one told a fragmented story of fear and desperation, hinting at something horrific that had occurred on the ship. The messages grew increasingly frantic and incoherent. Among the tapes, he found a crumpled piece of paper with a cryptic message. "The truth is buried in the bowels of the ship. Find the door marked with the seal of the abyss. Only then will you understand the true horror that waits." Marcus's curiosity deepened, but so did his apprehension. The recordings and the message hinted at something far more sinister than mere malfunctioning equipment. He resolved to follow the cryptic instructions and find this seal of the abyss. He navigated through the ship's corridors, each shadow and creak heightening his sense of dread. Hours passed as he searched, his flashlight illuminating forgotten corners and dusty passageways. Finally, he found a door marked with an old, faded emblem, a seal resembling a serpent coiled around an anchor. Marcus forced the door open with effort. Inside was a dimly lit chamber filled with old maritime documents, rotting furniture, and a large, ornate chest. He approached the chest with trepidation and opened it, revealing a collection of old, leather-bound journals. He began reading the journals. They detailed a horrifying tale of a secret voyage gone awry. The ship had been used for illicit experiments, attempting to harness unknown and dark forces from the depths of the ocean. The crew had been driven mad by the unseen entities, leading to their deaths in mysterious and gruesome ways. The recordings and the cryptic message had been warnings from the desperate crew members who had tried to expose the truth before their own demise. Marcus's blood ran cold as he pieced together the grim history. The ship was indeed cursed, its dark past hidden from the world. The voices on the recordings were those of the crew, still trapped in the ship's haunted corridors, warning others of the same fate. As Marcus finished reading, a chilling draft swept through the room, and he heard the faint whisper of voices, somewhere between a mournful wail and an angry growl. The shadows seemed to lengthen and writhe, and he felt an oppressive presence close by. Realizing he needed to leave before he became part of the ship's ghastly legacy, Marcus fled from the chamber. The alarms blared again, but this time they seemed to be a frantic, almost frantic call for him to escape. As he raced back to the exit, he glanced back at the darkened corridors, feeling the weight of the ship's malevolent history pressing down on him. He made it out, locking the door behind him and vowing never to return. The next day, the ship was reported as a lost cause, and it was soon decommissioned. Marcus's discovery remained classified, but the eerie tapes and journals hinted at the ship's dark legacy, a chilling reminder of the horrors that had been hidden in its depths. The cruise ship, currently docked for routine maintenance, loomed like a ghostly giant under the moonless night sky. Gary Mitchell, a seasoned security guard, was the only soul aboard, tasked with overseeing the ship's security during the downtime. He settled into his shift with a casual ease, expecting a quiet night. However, the peace was shattered by the sudden, shrill blare of the ship's alarm system. Gary frowned at the control panel in the security office. The alarm lights flickered erratically, but the system diagnostics showed no faults. Another false alarm, he muttered into his radio, which crackled in response from the dock supervisor. Just checking the usual spots. Everything seems fine. As he patrolled the empty corridors, Gary was unsettled by the disorienting silence between the alarms. The ship, normally vibrant with life, felt eerily desolate. The alarms stopped as abruptly as they had started, leaving Gary in an unsettling quiet that seemed to amplify the ship's creaks and groans. Suddenly, the alarms blared again, more urgently this time. Gary followed the sound to the lower decks. Each alarm activation seemed to lead him deeper into the ship's bowels. As he approached the aft section, he discovered an old, rusted maintenance hatch slightly ajar. The air was cold and musty, and the light from his flashlight revealed a faint, handwritten message scrawled on the wall. "The deeper you go, the closer they get." Unease gnawed at Gary, but he pressed on. He secured the hatch and continued his search, his flashlight revealing the neglected spaces of the ship. The alarms echoed sporadically, creating a disorienting rhythm as he moved. Each time he investigated, he found increasingly disturbing clues, abandoned personal items of the crew, cryptic symbols drawn in dust, and flickering lights casting haunting shadows. The alarms blared again, this time from a section of the ship he had not yet explored. Gary followed the noise to a forgotten storage room filled with old, decrepit equipment. Among the debris, he found a series of unsettling photographs pinned to a wall, pictures of the ship's crew in various stages of distress, their faces twisted in terror. Beneath each photo was a date and a chilling description of their final moments. Gary's heart raced. The photos hinted at something terrible that had happened on the ship, but the true nature of the threat remained unclear. He turned to leave, but the alarms sounded once more, now accompanied by a low, eerie wail that seemed to resonate from the very walls. Desperate to understand what was happening, Gary followed the wail to an old, abandoned passenger lounge. The room was shrouded in darkness, with only the dim beam of his flashlight cutting through the gloom. The wail grew louder as he approached a decrepit stage, where he found an old, dusty microphone and a series of handwritten notes scattered across the floor. One note was particularly disturbing, detailing a ritualistic ceremony performed by the crew in a desperate attempt to contact the spirit world. The note spoke of a dark presence that had taken hold of the ship, turning the crew into tormented souls who were now bound to the vessel. The alarms went off with renewed intensity, and Gary felt a cold draft as if the temperature in the room had dropped drastically. Shadows seemed to dance and twist, forming grotesque shapes on the walls. The low wail evolved into a cacophony of ghostly whispers, pleading and screaming. Gary's flashlight flickered wildly, and the room's eerie atmosphere became nearly unbearable. The whispers grew more coherent, revealing a chilling message: "You should have never come here. Now, you are part of the ship's curse." Realizing he was in grave danger, Gary bolted from the lounge, sprinting through the twisting corridors as the alarms continued their relentless barrage. The ghostly whispers followed him, growing louder and more desperate. The ship seemed to come alive with a malevolent force, its corridors becoming a labyrinth of horror. He retraced his steps to the security office, but the alarms and whispers grew more insistent, as if trying to prevent his escape. With a final burst of adrenaline, Gary reached the docked exit and fled the ship. Once on solid ground, he looked back at the vessel, its towering silhouette now seeming more menacing than ever. The alarms finally ceased, leaving behind an unsettling silence. The ship was soon sealed off, and Gary's report about the night's events was met with disbelief, though he was taken seriously enough to be relieved of duty. In the days that followed, the cruise ship was decommissioned, its haunting reputation growing with each retelling of Gary's ordeal. The ship's dark past remained shrouded in mystery, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lay beneath its surface. Gary, forever marked by his nightmarish experience, never spoke of it again, but the echoes of that night haunted him in the quiet moments of his life. The cruise ship, docked for extensive repairs, stood silent under the veil of night. Its once bustling decks were now empty, save for a lone security guard named James Walker. Tasked with overseeing the vessel's security during the off hours, James had expected a quiet shift. However, as the hours ticked by, the ship's silence became increasingly unsettling. James began his patrol in the fading twilight, his flashlight casting long shadows that danced along the ship's grand corridors. The vessel, though still and empty, seemed to whisper secrets in the dark. He shook off the chill that ran down his spine, attributing it to nerves. The ship was old, and the occasional creak and groan were nothing more than the vessel settling. The quiet was abruptly interrupted by a faint whispering that seemed to drift from nowhere. James paused, straining to identify the source. The whispers were indecipherable, a soft murmur that seemed to follow him as he walked. He called into his radio, but there was only static in response. Deciding it was best to continue his patrol, James walked towards the lower decks, where the sound of footsteps started echoing through the deserted halls. Each step seemed to reverberate, growing louder and more deliberate. James quickened his pace, his flashlight sweeping nervously across the walls. As he approached a dimly lit hallway, the footsteps stopped abruptly. The whispering grew louder, forming fragmented sentences that sent shivers down his spine. "Help us, trapped," the captain, the voices seemed to be pleading, their tone both mournful and accusatory. James reached the end of the hallway, where an old, wooden door stood slightly ajar. He hesitated before pushing it open, revealing a dark room filled with old maintenance equipment and forgotten supplies. The whispers intensified as he entered, but the room was empty. Turning to leave, James noticed something peculiar, a small, dust-covered journal partially hidden behind a stack of boxes. He picked it up, his hands trembling slightly as he opened it. The journal belonged to Captain Elias Crow, the vessel's former captain, who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances years earlier. The entries detailed disturbing events. The captain described a series of unexplained incidents, growing paranoia among the crew, and strange occurrences that defied explanation. The last entry was a desperate plea: "We're not alone. The ship has become a prison. The crew, something happened to them. We tried to escape, but it's too late." James felt a cold draft and heard the whispers intensify, now accompanied by the sound of shuffling footsteps. The atmosphere in the room grew thick with a sense of impending doom. He realized that the whispers were coming from behind a panel on the wall. With a mix of fear and determination, he pried open the panel. Behind it, he discovered a narrow passage leading to a hidden compartment. Inside were remnants of the crew's belongings, personal effects, photographs, and a series of old radio recordings. James played one of the recordings on a portable player. The voice was clear but filled with terror. "They're coming. We tried to warn the others, but no one believed us. They're trapped here, just like us. Don't stay, leave while you can." The realization hit him: the whispers were the voices of the trapped crew, their spirits still bound to the ship by the unresolved mysteries and possibly malevolent forces. James's flashlight flickered as the temperature in the room dropped. The shadows seemed to elongate and twist, forming eerie shapes that resembled spectral figures. The air grew heavy with a sense of dread. He knew he had to leave, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. With a final glance at the haunting remnants, James bolted from the hidden compartment, retracing his steps through the darkened corridors. The footsteps and whispers followed him, growing fainter as he neared the exit. He raced up the stairs and burst onto the deck, gasping for breath. He reported the strange occurrences to his superiors, but the haunting presence remained a secret known only to him. The ship was eventually decommissioned, its haunting past buried beneath layers of official silence. James Walker never returned to the cruise ship, but the echoes of that night remained with him. He often wondered about the spirits he'd heard and the secrets they had tried to reveal. The ghostly whispers and footsteps had become a reminder that some places are haunted not just by ghosts, but by the dark history they carry.